Hey everybody, it's Ryan Gray with Electric Brewing Supply. Today I'm going to go over setting up a electric BCS control setup with regards to the BCS settings and processes. This is going to be a basic rundown on the processes. The settings will be pretty much the same across any setup. It's just the processes. Everyone's going to be different. But we'll go ahead and go through it, and this should give you a good idea on where to go for with yours. So to begin, we need to go ahead and locate our BCS. If you know what IP address it is, great. Most people, when you first plug it in, aren't going to know. And the quickest solution to finding it is actually if you go to embeddedcc.com and pull up the wiki by clicking on the Learn link. At the bottom of the wiki homepage, you will find BCS Finder Utility. Go ahead and download that. It's literally just a single little executable file, and when you boot it, or when you open it up, it's going to give you a screen that looks just like this one, with the IP address of the BCS, the MAC address of it, your computer's IP, and the name of the device. Right now, in this case, it's Embedded Control Concepts. So we're going to go ahead and type that address into our web browser here. And it'll pop up your BCS. It should start looking like something like this. For the BCS 462, you'll see 8 temperature probes. For BCS 460, you will only see 4. As well, you'll also only see 6 outputs on the BCS 460 and 18 here in this case on the BCS 462. Those are going to be the two obvious differences between the two. Obviously, for smaller setups, the BCS 460 is plenty adequate. In this case, this system that we're using to demo is actually a brewing and fermentation unit. So I'll go through all as much as I can, at least on the brewing side today, and then we'll probably do a video later on the fermentation side. So let's go ahead. We're going to go into System Settings here in the top right. And in here, you have multiple tools. Most important, though, we're looking for is the communication settings, inputs, outputs, and output control settings. These are going to be the 3 main items we work with today. Under communication settings, this is where you set your network information if you want to leave it static, or if you want your network router to just issue an IP address each time. You can leave it that way. For those that have a hard time trying to remember what the IP address is, I would recommend you go ahead and put a static in there. That way, down the road, you don't have to as hard a time trying to remember the address. Usually, I'd stick with any static IP address. I'd stick with up in the 200s, primarily because most routers will issue IP addresses up to 150. So it's just a means to get outside their the allotment. So we're going to go ahead and disable DHCP. We're going to plug in our IP address here. These two should have already been populated by the earlier, or from when you booted up the first time. So we can go ahead and hit apply. And then that's going to save that. So we're going to go ahead back to system settings here. And in here, we're going to change the labels on each of our outputs and temperature probes. For those that want to calibrate their sensors, they can also do that via here and then putting the variables here. A note on the calibration: if you're buying the temperature probes from Brewers Hardware or Electric Brewing Supply with your BCS, you should not need to calibrate. These numbers are already configured for those temperature probes. So we're going to go ahead and label. This is going to be our HLT, and this will be our mash, and this is going to be our boil. And then I also, on my 4th probe, like to use it for my knockout. You can use it in many other places. I like to have the way my setup is, or the way it's configured, the knockout works best for me. And I therefore put it in most setups as well. So we're going to keep going here. All right. So we'll go ahead and hit apply. As you go, I'd recommend hitting apply just because anything that you type in is not saved until you actually hit apply. And since you don't want to do all this work and then lose it, it's just best to hit apply. So now we're going to go ahead and label our outputs. Quick note on outputs and temperature probes. They do not need to match up in the regards that output 1 ties to temperature probe 1 and so on and so forth. The reason is the only outputs that actually can be tied to the temperature probes are 0 through 6, or 0 through 5 actually, so 1 through 6. And at this point down here, we can actually map them. So we're going to go ahead and finish labeling our outputs. And this configured setup also happens to have 3 pumps as well. This is just to, because it's the equivalent of a permanent plumbed fixture. The plumbing's removable, but it's set up so all you have to do is flip valves. So we added the extra pump. So now here's the temperature probes. We're going to go ahead and map those. Temperature probe 0 is going to output 0, HLT to HLT. Output 1 is going to temperature probe 1, so boil to boil. And actually, that's not true. Temperature 2. So, and then output 2 is actually going to go to our glycol. And then we'll keep going down the list to the fermenters here. And then on the fermenter side, you'll note that for fermentation, I'm cooling, so we want to make sure we make that mark or that designation here. Otherwise, it's going to sit there and keep wanting to heat the fermenter up when it's really supposed to be cooling it. And so we'll double check just to be sure. We'll reapply. And then we can come down here. This one's a little more just kind of for your own let's see, so we can label it, and then we can also come down here. All these configurations and settings, once you're done and satisfied with how they are, you can click on each of these links here to back them up to your desktop computer. Highly recommend that, especially if you're going to upgrade the firmware at any point. Anytime you do any updates, it will actually wipe out those processes and you have to start over again. Passwords, good idea to password protect your BCS, especially if you're making it accessible to the outside. In this case, we're not, so we're not going to bother, at least not this time anyway. So we'll go ahead and hit apply one more time to save this change, and then we will go up to the top here and hit main control just to make sure everything shows up, and down here on these outputs, just a quick note on when you go to manual mode, these outputs to affect them in a direct on and off, you can actually just click on this link right here and that will turn them on and off. So for those that were curious, because in manual control, you see these here for 1 through 6. It's just, since these ones are supposed to be on-off only, they're just a click. So we'll go ahead and go back into the process here. All right, so now we've got our items labeled. We're ready to go. So we're going to go ahead and create our first process. In this case, the first process is going to be to heat my strike water. And we're going to heat it to, at this point, since I haven't started the system up, I'm going to just aim based off past experience, which is I'm going to go for about 155 to 160 to hit my mark on the strike side, which would be usually right around 153. in my case. Obviously for you yourself, you configure it to work within your tolerances or targets. So we're going to go heat to strike, heat to 155, and then we're going to sit there and mash in. Okay, so I'm going to apply those labels. And then we're going to go making sure to watch this drop down here. We're heating to 155. To do that, I'm going to turn on my HLT and set my target of 156. And we're going to do PID control. For electric setup, you can use PID control. For gas, you cannot. PID is going to cycle it a lot more quickly. Therefore, the gas valves obviously won't do you any good. So we'll hit that, turn that on. And then meanwhile, we also, in this setup, want to have the mash and the water pump going. And the exit condition is going to be when my mash temperature reaches my target of let's say 153 today. Again, this will change as I go down the road and dial in the system. This is just the initial configuration. So, all right. So what it's going to do, we want to, once you set your exit condition, you want to tell it where to go next. In this case, we want to go to the next state. And then we'll go to the next state on the system here. Again, we want the HLT to be on. We want it to hold at whatever the last one was. I want my pump still going. And I also want an alarm going, which is actually on output 9. Yep. So we'll go ahead and hit apply. And also, that little input button that I had labeled, we're going to use input here, is on. When we click it, it's going to go actually to mash in. And we will say apply. Okay. So now I'll go to mash in. Again, most of these temperatures that I'm putting in are really just rough guesstimate where they're going to need to be. I don't know where they're going to need to be ultimately until I actually fire it up and start putting water in the system. So this is just the initial configuration. Once we're done mashing in, I want to be able to push the input button again, and then move to process off, and and then have that go into here, into spawn and kill. When process turns off, in this case process 0 turns off, I want to make sure it's killed. We're going to have it spawn process 1. Process 1 is going to be my mash temperatures, or the cooking of the mash. So we'll go ahead and hit apply, and then we'll go to process 1. Be sure to watch the state. You don't want to sit there and do your first state over here on the 6th. So we'll go ahead and cook mash. In this case, I'm going to do a step mash today. So we're going to do set our first step, hold that step, set our next step, hold that one as well. Now I'm sure there's another way to do this, as far as I'm sure you can use a ramp and step. This is just a clean and simple way of doing it. It's worked quite well for me over the past 2 years since I started brewing with BCS, so I'd prefer not to change it. So we're going to go ahead and hold down. So we're going to hit apply, let it update everything over here. Okay, and since I'm using a Herm setup, so the coil's in my HLT, we're going to have the HLT on. We're going to have it PID controlled, and we're going to have that temperature sitting somewhere. Again, we'll find out more as we tune it in. So we'll go ahead and hit our outputs, and I want this on the mash side to be greater than the target temperature, at which point I want it to sit there and hold. And we don't want anything spawning or killing here, so we can leave that. Apply. And then we'll go to the next one here. And we'll just keep doing this for the different temperatures. So we'll get these plugged in. And on this second one, on the hold, I'm actually looking to hold it for a set amount of time. So we'll go ahead and enable a timer. And I want it to be greater than. We're going to let it sit for 20 minutes. At which point I want it to go to the next step. So we'll hit apply. And we'll go temperature again. And we're just going to run through these real quick. You can probably fast forward a little bit even. I'm going to set it for 164. And as you saw, I just went ahead and had it, when this process shuts off, it's going to kill the last two, just as an insurance, and then spawn the next one. So we'll move on to the next process here, which is going to be my moving the mash over. So we're going to go mash out. In this case for electric, what I like to do is I like to have the HLT on, neither on, and the boil on. The reason I do it this way is that way I can still keep my HLT water to a certain temperature, just to minimize any chance of loss. And then as the element in the boil side starts to get covered up, theoretically the HLT is starting to become visible. So I usually like to have it off for a little bit, and then I'll dump it once the element in the boil side is good to go. Then I'll go ahead and turn that element on. It alleviates the drag, the weight for it to come to boil by pushing the water to keeping the temperature up. So we're going to go ahead and apply that. So we'll keep the HLT on here. And I usually don't keep it at that higher mark. I just kind of keep it at a temperature that's up. Okay, and then we'll go ahead and hit up. In this case, it's going to be the input button on my control panel that I push. And then we go to neither. Here we'll just have the pumps on. And again, input. And then the last one. And this number really is not anything particular. I kind of keep it down just because I don't want it to bring the little bit of wort to a boil yet. I want it to just kind of keep it warm so that when I'm ready to go to a boil, we can get going. So we'll go ahead and do that. And then on the input, we're going to again push input is on. This time we'll kill the process, which means we come down here. I want to make sure all the previous ones are down, and we will turn on the next one. And we'll hit apply. And then we'll do our last one, which is just the boil. There's a couple ways you can do it. I like to use the software to remind me of things, usually because I'm trying to multitask it as I go. So we'll go boil, bring to boil, add first hop at 60 minutes. Then we're going to add second at 15 minutes. And then we're going to say end to boil. And then from there we can just do knockout, or whirlpool. And knockout. So, all right, so we'll go ahead and hit apply, and we'll go through these steps here. For the boil, on the electric setups, it's going to be, we're going to put in again what I've done in the past, but it may ultimately apply differently down the road. So what we'll do here is for bringing to boil, I bring it as close to boiling temperature as I can. So I usually aim for about 213 degrees here in Houston. And I don't need to obviously have any pumps on. So we're just going to hit, once it hits that 213, we're going to have it go to add first hop. So we'll hit apply. And this temperature, it could ultimately end up having to kind of tweak. Just like I said, Houston, we're at sea level. Denver, you might be slightly different. Here's one note. Always watch this box here. So we got to redo what I just did there. So there we go. And then we'll go add first hop. Again, I want this to be still sitting here at 213. And actually, I have to make a quick tweak. But then I also have my alarm going off to yell at me to let me know to put the hops in. And then we're going to use our input button to go to the next state, which actually the next state is going to be not add second hops, but it will be to actually boil, to actually cook. So we need to do this real quick. There we go. Slight change. Okay, and then for boil, this is where it's slightly different for everybody. We want to hit duty cycle. And duty cycle will vary depending on the elements. This is a 4500 watt element in a in a kegel. So we're going to run it. We're just going to estimate probably about 80% of the time. But obviously this could change. We'll see as we go. So then we go, this one we want it to run for 45 minutes. And we'll hit timer, at which point we want it to yell at us to add second hops or any other additions that you plan to make. Obviously you can change this as well for whatever batch of brew you're working on for that day. So we'll go ahead and hit apply. Add our second hop. And I'm going to just leave this at 80%. Oops. And then this one, I want the alarm going off. And then we want to wait for user input to move on. And boil again some more. In this case, we'll do 15 minutes. And then we got it boil end. At which point it'll shut off on the boil side, but we wanted to let us know that it's done this. Not that we aren't probably standing there waiting for it. Input. Whirlpool. In this case, we want our wort pump going. And knockout. And there we have it. At knockout, we still have our wort pump going. And then our input. And then we'll have it kill all the process. And there you have it. We're set to go for the first day. And so when you go to your main control, if you click any one of these, it'll start one of those processes. Obviously, so we're going to usually just hit heat to strike, and then away you go. And that should conclude this video. If you have any questions, you're welcome to email us at sales@ebrewsupply.com, and I can try and help you as we go. That should do it. Have a good afternoon. Thanks for watching.